I knew I didn't matter the year I turned 10, because that was the year my birthday became just another Tuesday, while my brother's birthday was treated like a national holiday. My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 32 years old now, a successful entrepreneur. People know me as the woman who built her own empire from scratch. But before all of that, before the headlines, before the glass office with my name on the door, I was just the forgotten child at my own kitchen table. And if you're into the real story, not the polished headlines, not the glossy highlight reels, but the messy, painful truths families try to bury, then go ahead and subscribe. Because what I'm about to tell you, this is the part they never show you. And if you want to see how this betrayal turns into the kind of ending no one expected, you should definitely be subscribed. I can still see it. Daniel's 8th birthday. Streamers across the ceiling, balloons bouncing across the floor, a cake so tall I couldn't see over it. The whole neighborhood packed into our house, their voices so loud they drowned out my thoughts. My mother buzzing from room to room, my father grilling outside, Daniel grinning ear to ear as everyone handed him boxes wrapped in shiny paper. And me? I sat at the corner of the table, holding a paper plate with half-melted ice cream, wondering if anyone would even notice I was there. Every year it was the same. Daniel's birthday meant spectacle. Mine meant silence. On my 12th birthday, there was no cake, no balloons, no laughter. Just a quiet dinner, my father scrolling through his phone, my mother washing dishes. And when I looked around the table, no one said anything. No happy birthday. Not even Daniel, who sat there licking frosting off his fingers from leftover cupcakes his class had given him. And when I finally whispered, "Did you forget what today is?" my father didn't even look up. "We can't afford 2 big parties, Olivia. Daniel's younger. Let him enjoy these years." My mother's voice was softer, but it cut the same. "You're strong, sweetheart. You don't need all this fuss. You've always been the independent one." Independent. That was their word for invisible. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't perfect. I wasn't the loudest kid in the room. I didn't demand attention the way Daniel did. I was the girl who sat in the library, nose buried in a book, dreaming about the day I'd run a company of my own. But Daniel was the sun in my parents' eyes. Even as a boy, he basked in it. Smug, charming, spoiled. On my 16th birthday, when they forgot again, he smirked and said, "Guess you're just too boring for a party, Olivia." I laughed it off in front of him, but later that night, I cried so hard my chest ached. My parents never noticed. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. There's one memory that still claws at me. I was 14. Everyone was in the living room, eating leftover cake from Daniel's party the day before. Balloons still floated in the corner, wrapping paper was stuffed into garbage bags. And me? I sat alone in my room, staring at a single cupcake I had bought with my babysitting money. I lit the candle myself, whispered "Happy Birthday" to an empty room, and blew it out in silence. That's when I knew. I wasn't just forgotten, I was erased. And as the smoke curled off that candle, I made myself a promise. One day, they'll remember my name. Even if I have to make the whole world remember it first. That was the seed, the wound that drove everything else. My empire, my drive, my hunger. It all started with a forgotten birthday candle and the sound of laughter downstairs that never included me. And while they may have forgotten me back then, I made sure the world would never forget me again. Leaving home didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. I remember packing my bags for college, stuffing notebooks full of business plans in between thrift store sweaters and cheap pairs of shoes. My parents hugged me goodbye, but even in that moment, it wasn't about me. My father's words still sting. "Don't take life so seriously, Olivia. Why not just join Daniel in the family business? He's got the charm for it." My mother, smiling politely, added, "You'll always land on your feet, sweetheart, but don't overdo it. Not everything has to be about proving yourself." And Daniel, he leaned against the doorway, grinning that smug grin that had followed me my entire childhood. "Lighten up, sis. Life isn't a competition. Not everything has to be about you." That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay tethered to them. If I wanted a life that was mine, I'd have to build it from the ground up, alone. My first apartment wasn't a home. It was a shoebox. The walls were thin, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the only furniture I owned was a secondhand desk with 3 uneven legs. Bills piled up on the counter. Rejection letters scattered across the floor. I kept ramen stocked in bulk because it was the only meal I could afford. Nights stretched into mornings as I scribbled notes, drafting plan after plan that seemed brilliant in my head but useless to every investor I pitched them to. I'd sit across shiny conference tables, heart pounding, slides ready. And every time, it ended the same: a smile, a handshake, and a polite dismissal. You're too young. This is too ambitious. Compete with Carter Enterprises? Honey, you'll never stand a chance. They didn't even see me as Olivia Bennett. To them, I was Daniel's sister, the quiet Bennett girl, a shadow of a family name that only ever belonged to him. There were nights when it broke me, nights when I sat on the floor of that apartment holding another rejection letter, tears soaking the ink until the words blurred. Nights when I questioned everything. Was I foolish to think I could rise above them? Was I destined to always be the forgotten child? But here's the thing about pain. It can drown you, or it can forge you. Every no I heard didn't push me down. It pushed me forward. Because every rejection was one more reason I had to make them say yes. Daniel stayed in touch, but not out of care. His calls came late at night, usually after some party. "You should see the turnout tonight, Liv. Everyone was there. You work too hard. Come loosen up for once." I'd hang up, staring at my peeling apartment walls, listening to his laughter echo in my head. He didn't know it, but every brag, every careless remark lit a fire under me. His arrogance drove me harder than any ambition ever could. My parents, too, never failed to remind me of where they thought I belonged. "Why don't you come home, Olivia?" my mother would say. "Daniel could use your help. He's the face of the family, but you've always been good with details." The face, the details, that's what I was to them. Background work for someone else's spotlight. And society? Guests, neighbors, family friends, they still never saw me. At weddings, at reunions, I was always introduced as Daniel's sister. People asked about his success, his plans, his future. My presence was invisible, my name rarely spoken. One night, after yet another failed pitch, I came home to find my power shut off. I lit a single candle on my desk, the same way I had years before on a forgotten birthday. I opened my notebook, and as I scribbled by candlelight, I whispered to myself, "When I rise, I'll rise louder than their silence ever was." It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was survival. It was hunger. It was the only way to turn pain into something I could stand on. That night, the seed of an idea took root, a dream bigger than rejection, bigger than Carter Enterprises, bigger than the weight of being forgotten. Someday, I would throw a party so grand, so unforgettable, that no one, not my parents, not Daniel, not society, would ever dare overlook me again. And that dream became my fuel. I didn't know how long it would take. I didn't know how many tears or how many sleepless nights stood between me and the life I wanted. But I knew one thing. They may have forgotten me, but I would make sure the world never would. And as I hunched over my desk, the candlelight flickering across the pages of my plans, I whispered again, almost like a prayer. "When I rise, I'll rise louder than their silence ever was." By 32, I had it all. At least, that's what people saw when they looked at me. CEO of a thriving company, my name in business magazines, glass offices that overlooked the city skyline, people in boardrooms pausing when I spoke, not because I was Daniel's sister, but because I was Olivia Bennett, the one they couldn't ignore anymore. And yet, even in the middle of all that success, the little girl who blew out a single candle alone on her birthday still lived inside me. The one who sat at the dinner table and watched her parents clap for Daniel's cake while her own day passed like it was nothing. That girl was the reason tonight mattered. Because tonight wasn't just a party, it was the party. The venue shimmered like something out of a dream, chandeliers dripping crystal light from the ceiling, a balcony that opened out to the glittering city skyline, skyscrapers glowing like candles in the night. White linen stretched across tables, each topped with champagne flutes that caught the light like liquid gold. Reporters flashed their cameras the second I stepped through the doors. Flashes burst across the room, guests whispering as my heels echoed against the marble. She's built an empire. That's the Bennett girl? She's unrecognizable. No, she's unforgettable. Hundreds of people filled the room. Investors, colleagues, employees who had been with me since the beginning. Friends who had watched me climb, who had carried me when I nearly broke. Tonight, they weren't just celebrating me. They were celebrating the survival, the grit, the rise. I felt the eyes on me, the admiration, the respect. And for a moment, I thought, this is enough. This is what it feels like to be remembered. But then, they showed up. They didn't RSVP. Of course they didn't. My parents walked in as if nothing had ever happened. My mother's smile, practiced and polished. My father's posture still stiff with authority. They wore entitlement like a second skin, as if this empire, this night, was somehow theirs to claim. And then Daniel walked in. Late, loud, grinning, dressed sharp but already loosening his tie like he owned the room. He slapped backs, kissed cheeks, and announced himself to anyone within earshot. The life of the party is here. Of course he expected to be treated like royalty. He always had. Why would tonight be any different? I watched from across the room, my champagne glass cold in my hand. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. They had forgotten my birthdays for decades, but tonight they remembered. Of course they did. The world was watching. The lights dimmed, and the room hushed as I walked toward the stage. My heels struck steady against the floor, each step echoing in my chest. Behind me, the screen flickered on. Childhood photos lit up the wall. Balloons, cakes, Daniel's smiling face, surrounded by gifts stacked higher than his head. The crowd murmured, charmed by the nostalgia. But then the photos kept rolling, year after year, party after party. Daniel at 5, Daniel at 10, Daniel at 16. Always Daniel, always laughing, always celebrated. And then, silence. No photos of me, no balloons, no cake, no candles, just empty years. The silence in the room grew heavier with every missing frame. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few exchanged whispers. Wait, where's hers? She didn't have any? Oh my God. I let the pause linger before stepping to the microphone. Some of us learned early that love was conditional, that recognition was reserved for the chosen one, that silence was a gift wrapped in disappointment. But we learn, don't we? We learn to build our own light when left in the dark. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw my parents pale, their smiles faltering. My father's jaw tightened, my mother's hand gripped her clutch like a lifeline. Daniel shifted in his chair, fidgeting with his tie. The slideshow stopped. The stage lights warmed my face, and all eyes were on me. Daniel, always the loudest in the room, tried to laugh it off. Olivia, come on, don't be so dramatic. I turned to him, voice sharp as glass. Dramatic? Try forgotten. Try erased. Try blowing out candles by yourself while the rest of the house sang for someone else. This isn't drama, Daniel. This was my life. The room froze. Gasps, whispers, the sound of champagne glasses setting down too quickly. Daniel's smile wavered, and for the first time, he had nothing to say. I steadied my breath, letting the silence settle before I spoke again. But tonight isn't about the past. Tonight is about the future. Tonight is about remembering that every single one of us, every child, every person is worth celebrating, no matter who noticed, no matter who didn't. The applause erupted like thunder. People stood, clapping, cheering, cameras flashing. My chest ached, but for once, it wasn't from the weight of being unseen. It was from standing in the light, fully, unapologetically. I stepped back from the microphone, the applause still roaring in my ears. My parents sat frozen, humiliation etched across their faces. Daniel slouched in his chair, cornered by the truth. And me? I stood radiant, Not just as the little girl who had been forgotten, but as the woman the world could no longer ignore. And as the applause washed over me, I thought, this is what it feels like to finally be remembered. The applause from my speech still echoed when I stepped off the stage, but beneath the noise I could feel it, the whispers, the sideways glances, the buzzing gossip circling the room like wildfire. They never celebrated her? Can you believe the parents just sat there? Poor Olivia. No wonder she made it this far. The sound was both vindicating and suffocating. For years, I had dreamed of the world finally knowing the truth. But now that it was out in the open, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was something heavier, something unfinished. I slipped away from the crowd, through a side hallway into a smaller, dimly lit lounge. The music from the ballroom dulled to a distant hum. I needed air. I needed silence. But silence didn't last, because they followed me. Daniel was the first to step inside, his shoulders hunched, all his usual swagger drained. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting everywhere but at me. I didn't realize, he stammered. I was just a kid, Olivia. I didn't mean. Didn't mean? My voice cracked sharper than I intended. I swallowed hard. You laughed, you bragged, you stood in the spotlight while I was erased. You didn't have to mean it, Daniel. You lived it. He dropped his gaze, his mouth opening, closing, then nothing. For once, Daniel had no performance left in him. Then my parents stepped forward. My mother's face was pale, her lips pressed tight, as if words might betray her. My father stood stiff as ever, but his voice trembled when he spoke. We thought we were doing what was best for the family, he said. My chest tightened, heat rising to my face. I took a step closer. Best for who? I shot back. For the son you adored, or the daughter you ignored? Tell me, what part of forgetting me was best for anyone but yourselves? Their silence was louder than any excuse. I turned away from them, my hands trembling. I stared at my reflection in the glass window, city lights flickering behind me. And I confessed, not to them, but to myself and to the audience listening in my heart. All my life, I wanted one thing from them, an apology, just once, for someone to look me in the eyes and say, Olivia, we were wrong. You mattered too. I let out a shaky breath, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. But standing here now, I know I may never hear those words. And the truth is, I don't need them anymore, because I already proved it. To the world, to myself, to the little girl they forgot. I turned back to face them. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother's eyes shimmered. Daniel couldn't even lift his head. I could have cut them out of my life right there. I could have humiliated them the way they had humiliated me, left them outside the walls of my success. But revenge wasn't what that little girl inside me had wanted. What she wanted was to belong. I steadied my breath. You forgot my birthdays. You forgot me. But I won't forget my family. Not tonight. Their eyes widened. My mother's lips quivered. Daniel looked up, startled. I built this life without you, I continued, voice steady. But tonight, I choose to let you back in. Not as the ones who defined me, but as the ones who get to witness who I've become. I gestured toward the door. Come back to the party, not as honored guests, but as humbled ones. We walked back into the ballroom together. Guests turned, whispers rising again, but this time the story was different. I felt my mother's hand brush mine, hesitant, trembling, as she whispered, "We're sorry." My father cleared his throat, his pride cracked, his voice softer than I had ever heard. You proved us wrong. Daniel trailed behind, his shoulders no longer square, his smirk gone. He didn't need to say anything. His silence said enough. The crowd saw us together, fragile but healing. They saw the story not of humiliation, but of reconciliation. And for once, I didn't feel invisible. I felt whole. Later that night, after the last guest left and the chandeliers dimmed, I stood alone at the balcony. The city stretched before me, endless lights glowing like candles in the dark. I raised my glass to the skyline. They forgot my birthdays. They forgot me. But I'll never let them forget the woman I became. Because I rose, not in spite of them, but beyond them. I paused, a soft smile curving on my lips. To the girl they forgot, and to the woman no one will ever ignore again. The glass touched my lips, the city lights flickered, and, for the first time in my life, I felt celebrated. Not by them, not by the crowd, but by me. And that was enough.